So welcome back to Berkshire News and Politics. And today we have a bit of an election special. And we've got James Aldridge, our regular reporter and BBC reporter who covers the Reading area. James, welcome.
Yeah, pleasure to be here as usual.
Excellent. So we're going to be covering a number of stories, including a university, Reading University, being accused of platforming transphobia, a pro-life protest, which I find it's interesting to me, and of course dangerous trees that West Berkshire Council won't let residents cut down. So talking about the debate between, well, at what stage how far do you protect a tree, and what stage do we actually look to manage it because there is a threat to life and limb, and not just, and also to its own health. But we're going to start off with elections. There's all-out elections, I hear, in Reading for the first time in a number of years, with a whole new political set of boundaries. Tell us more.
Yeah, so there's the parties are clashing for 48 seats on Reading Borough Council, so it is an all-out election. 2 new seats have been created. So previously there were 46 councillors on Reading Borough Council, and now there will be 48. The boundary changes, for the most part, are in effect north of the river. So in Caversham, there was 2 wards called Maple Durham and Peppard. They have been abolished in favour of the new Caversham Heights ward. And with all of the wards up for election at Reading Borough Council this year, all of them are electing 3 councillors. When voters go to the polls on Thursday, May 5th, you'll get 3 votes.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's great to hear. So Thursday, May the 5th, election time, I presume it starts at about 9 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, goes on till about 10 p.m. at night.
7 a.m. till 10 p.m. Usually that's when the polling stations are open. So make sure you get there for those times if you want to vote.
All right. And where can people find out where their polling stations are?
You'll be able to find out online, and it's on your polling card as well. So everyone's delivered polling cards. You don't need your polling card to vote, but it will tell you where your polling station is physically. And also you can check for your polling station using your address postcode, home address postcode online.
Okay. And of course, you can always just jump onto social media and some of the local groups that you may have in Facebook and inquire there as to where your polling station is. And we absolutely encourage you, part of our democracy, get out there, vote, find out who these guys are. Tell me more about the candidates. So I understand that you've done something more in depth about the candidates and the policies. So where can people find out more about policies that the various parties are putting forward for Reading for the next 4 years?
So the 4 main parties, which are the Labour Party, which is currently in control, the Conservatives, the Green Party, and the Liberal Democrats, they've all released manifestos. I did a manifesto roundup, which was published on the Reading Chronicle. So if you type in Reading Party manifestos 2022, you should be able to find it online. And also on their specific websites. I believe for the Conservatives, for example, you've got to go onto the Reading East Conservatives website to have a look at the manifesto and what priorities they want to put forward.
And is there anything that within those manifestos, as you've done an article on it and you've done a summary of it, what sort of strikes you as some of the key differences between the political parties locally?
Well, the Conservatives in particular are complaining about the high-level council tax in Reading, and Reading ratepayers being spending the most in terms of they've got the highest council tax rates in all of Berkshire. That's something that the Conservatives are arguing, and they're saying that if they were in power, they would do better. They would try and find efficiencies and that sort of thing. Labour are proud of their record.
Let me just stop a second. So you're saying that the Conservatives are proposing that they will not increase council tax by as much each year as there is now. Is that what you're saying?
That's what they're saying. They probably want to find efficiencies and find out where cuts can be made. And they say, I think they've argued that there are inefficiencies which the council needs to tighten up on. And once those inefficiencies are identified, cuts can be made, and they can give council taxpayers a relief. But the Labour, like I said, the Labour administration are proud of their record. They've announced extra spending for adult social care. They have introduced a free bulky waste collection service, which we mentioned in previous podcasts, and they'll be seeking to cling on to power. And the Green Party and the Liberal Democrats, they want to advocate for people in the areas that they're prioritising.
Okay, so there's no specific policies or suggestions across council from the Greens or the Lib Dems?
Well, yeah. I mean, they do have priorities and continue to lobby, but realistically, Reading will most likely stay in Labour control. The council will stay in Labour control. So I think what the Greens and Lib Dems do have priorities which they want to advocate for, but in all likelihood, they don't have much of a chance of gaining full control. So they're probably focusing on local issues.
Okay, so it sounds as if, I mean, I have to say, please get out there and vote, because the number of people who don't vote, if you turned up and voted, you could have a wholly independent or a wholly green council here. But it really is up to you to get out there and vote. But coming back to the Labour Party, does it sound as if they've been fairly popular or not unpopular over the last few years in terms of what they've achieved locally?
Well, in terms of elections, so Labour, Reading Borough Council was elected in thirds, and then every now and again you do have to have these all-out elections, which is happening this year. In every election in recent memory, they've held on to power. But they are experiencing pressure from both angles. They're experiencing pressure from the left, so the Greens and a party called the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, which is running candidates in Southcote and Northcote. And effectively, the Greens are arguing they're better placed to protect green spaces, and they're freer to object to planning applications for houses, which is a hot button issue. And the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition have slammed the Labour administration for not opposing cuts, not opposing financial cuts. So the Labour Party are facing pressure. But I think there's a lot of entrenched support for Labour out there in Reading throughout, because I mean, I mentioned there is the entrenched Labour vote from traditionally working class communities, and also from minority communities tend to swing for Labour as well, which will probably hold this election and make sure that Labour stay in control.
Okay.
And from what I mentioned on the right, the Labour are being pressurised by the Conservatives, who are complaining about the levels of council taxes, which they say are the highest in Berkshire.
Yeah, I'm quite interested that your comment was that the Greens tend to have a prominence around the university area, the Conservatives in the more rural and affluent areas, and of course the Labour Party in the town centre. So it sounds as if there are some battleground already, or battle lines or areas, territories already sort of marked out. And it looks as if, perhaps I'm wrong here, Caversham is going to get some new Conservative councillors, or is that likely to be split?
Well, the lower Caversham area goes more towards Labour. And then when you get sort of central and further north and west and east in Caversham, that's where the Conservatives have a stronger showing, and I think that's likely to hold out this year. There was a ward, there's still a ward called Caversham, but there have been substantial boundary changes, and the incumbent Labour councillors are standing in a ward called the Thames Ward, which incorporates Lower Caversham, which is north of the river, and areas immediately south of the river as well in that ward. And I think they're probably going to break for Labour, that Thames ward, which we just mentioned. However, I think the majority of Caversham is going to go Conservative. And as we mentioned, so the number of councillors is going up from 46 to 48. These two new seats have, I think, effectively been created in Caversham. So what you said is right. It's a possibility that we could see two new Conservative councillors on the council, no matter what.
Okay. So get out there and vote, guys, on Thursday, the 5th of May. And James, where can they find out more about the manifestos? Where's your article?
So if you type into your search engine Reading manifestos local elections 2022, you'll be able to find a brief description of what the manifestos are and links to them where you can read them in full.
Okay. And if you really don't like any of the candidates, stand yourself next time. We'd love to hear from you if you fancy doing that. I'm always so happy to help you out. James, thank you. So let's move across to West Berkshire. Dangerous trees. What's the story here?
In Tilehurst is divided in between Reading Borough Council and West Berkshire Council. So the western half of Tilehurst is in West Berkshire. Some neighbours are complaining that that they want to get trees cut down in their houses, trees which are Monterey pines, which were imported from America.
So these are non-native trees.
Yeah, these are non-native trees, but they were planted in this area of Tilehurst, and a housing development was built up around them. And now residents there are saying that these trees are causing problems because branches and cones are snapping off, and which present a risk to their children and grandchildren. And also the trees are used for pigeon roosting, and the pigeons are sort of plopping on their gardens and presenting a health risk for their children.
Absolutely.
And one family, they have a climbing frame, but they have the pigeon spikes. They have to have pigeon spikes on the climbing frame to prevent pigeons from sort of
roosting and doing what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And one mum did complain that her young child was eating pigeon poo in one instant. Luckily, the child has grown up a bit more now, and she won't do that anymore. But there is a health risk. There is a health risk, one woman who's a grandmother, she has a dog, and the dog, when the pigeons do their business, then the dog's walking around in it, and that presents a cleanliness issue when the dog goes inside the house.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true that when it comes to sort of bird feces, especially when it starts to flake, because it's fairly dry, it does cause, there are some big health issues like emphysema and other health aspects, and not just and allergic reactions. But I'm also interested that it strikes me that good tree management would do a number of things. One is that you need to coppice trees because their boughs get unhealthy and they do threaten life, limb, and property. And so it surprises me that West Berkshire have not looked at this aspect of it, as well as the fact that these are non-native trees. And what effect are these trees having on the, if you like, the foundations of the houses if they're getting that big? And West Berkshire Council commented on any of these aspects of trying to balance the interest, the various interests here, as well as trying to promote local biodiversity.
Okay, so they've proposed clipping the trees, clipping branches rather than cutting the trees down. So that's where they're at with it. These trees have tree preservation orders placed on them because they're trees of significance. So I can say what the council has told me about it. Someone from the West Berkshire Council's countryside team said tree preservation orders help to protect and preserve trees for the enjoyment of local people and the environment and visual benefits they bring to communities. We are committed to protecting these trees whilst also working with residents when local issues arise. We've attended these properties several times in recent years, and on those occasions have not had concerns about the trees, so the council doesn't have concerns about them. Property owners can apply to carry out work on the trees at any time, but we would suggest they seek advice of the advice of a professional arborist beforehand to ensure that their proposals are proportionate and don't pose a risk to the long-term health of the trees. Now, basically, the neighbours have argued that these trees probably won't exist for much longer anyway, and
why is that?
branches are snapping off. Well, the thing is, the branches are snapping off. The tree roots in one man's garden are sort of lifting the paving tiles in his garden. And yeah, they do have some of them have vines growing on them, which means that they're probably not as healthy. My sympathies do lie with the residents in this occasion. And on applications they have proposed replacing the Monterey pines with Scotch pines or native tree species.
Yeah, and of course it's a tricky issue to understand, because obviously a 50-year-old tree is going to have a huge amount of carbon value and biodiversity value compared to a tree that's just been planted. So yeah, some real balances there, but it sounds as if the West Berkshire Council should sit down and talk to the neighbours and find out what's a workable solution.
I mean, the trees are very tall, so I don't know what the logistics would be for cutting them down safely. But at present, when a branch or pines snap off, they can pose a risk to their property. And one family, they did have a shed, and a branch fell on it and effectively crushed the roof of the shed down, which meant they had to replace the shed. Which was being used for their children to play in. So it is causing an issue for residents.
Well, obviously, I understand that the coppicing and tree care has to continue, and they have to be looked after. And as I said, cutting away old branches, boughs which are rotting and dead, is an important part of that tree husbandry. Tell us about the protests in Reading. So 2 protests.
Okay, so on St. George's Day, so last Saturday, a pro-life group called the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children held a roadside demonstration from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. At the end of King's Road towards Cemetery Junction in East Reading. It's a very busy road on a weekend, so many people did see their messaging urging people to protect unborn children and sort of oppose abortion measures. Although the group is not denominational, so it's not exclusive to one particular faith, the majority of the people at this particular protest were worshippers from the St. William of York Roman Catholic Church, which is located in Upper Redlands Road, Reading. Okay.
Now, what are they protesting about?
So opposing abortion and for the lives of unborn children generally. At present, women can have access to medical abortions from home, which involves a teleconsultation, so a sort of online or over the phone consultation with a medical professional, and after that, they can obtain 2 drugs, as far as I'm aware, and those drugs will abort the child.
Is this something new?
No, I mean it's been something that has been in place since the pandemic.
And understand that there was recently a vote in the House of Commons. Was it to extend the application of the law?
Well, what it did was it extended medical abortions from home, and the vote broke 215 in favour of extending medical abortions from home, and 188 against it.
So it wasn't that close, I suppose. How did local MPs vote in that debate?
Okay, so the people who voted for medical abortions being continued from home were Matt Rodder, who's the Labour MP for the Reading East constituency, Laura Farris, the Conservative MP for the Newbury constituency, and Theresa May, the Conservative MP and former Prime Minister, who is the representative of the Maidenhead constituency. So they all voted for it. And I see it surprising that Theresa May voted for it, as it's quite well known that she holds Christian beliefs. So it's sort of interesting that she voted to continue these abortions from home, and 3 Berkshire MPs voted against it. So Adam Afriyie, the Conservative MP for Windsor, voted against it. James Sunderland, the Conservative MP for Bracknell, he voted against it. And finally, Sir John Redwood voted against it too. And Sir John is a Conservative MP.
Okay, there's a few MPs missing from that list. What happened to Tandesi then?
Certainly. So Tandesi, the Labour MP for Slough, he did not. No vote was recorded for him. He is a Sikh, so he's a member of the Sikh faith, and I think generally they're against abortion. But he no vote was registered for him, and neither was a vote registered for Alok Sharma, who's the Conservative MP for the Reading West constituency, and remains as the president of the COP26 conference.
Okay, I wonder what happened to those three. We'll never know unless we
Those
ask
two,
them.
those two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the numbers of abortions, have we got any stats or figures about how many home abortions and how many abortions happen in the UK?
Not specifically, but figures for not specifically for home abortions. It would be interesting to get those statistics, but those haven't been recorded. But the government has admitted that somewhere in the region of 210,000 abortions were undertaken last year. So a rather high amount. I understood it was in the region of hundreds of thousands per year. And if you look at the trends, it's an increasing trends that people are having abortions.
Yeah, and that 210,000 is just for England and Wales, I understand. It doesn't include Scotland.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Northern Ireland and other
I
areas.
think. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's only England and Wales and why Scotland isn't included in that. I think it might be something to do with the devolution of powers for health. I think that's probably the reason why.
All right. So depending on where you stand, it's either a success or it's another sadness, one of the two.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening in Reading? There was another protest, I understand.
This one was not necessarily a protest exactly. It was a call by LGBT plus groups to stop a lecture, and the lecture was from a woman called Dr. Lawford Smith. So I'll get her full name up. So her full name was
so she was
Dr. Holly Lawford Smith.
Right.
So she's a philosophy lecturer from New Zealand. She was born in New Zealand, and she has a permanent position as a philosophy lecturer in Sheffield. And LGBT plus groups in Reading have claimed that the lecture that she was holding was about conversion therapy. And how she allegedly opposes conversion therapy for gay and lesbian people, but maybe not so much. It doesn't include transgender people in that.
Okay. So do we know that's what she's spoken? Because obviously the stats show that conversion therapy as a concept has been, people try to use it on gays and lesbians, homosexuals and lesbians, but we haven't really seen it as a track record of people trying to use it against transgender individuals, which must be much more difficult if you've actually physically had an operation to change your dynamics, your physical dynamics. So it sounds like she was promoting gay and lesbian rights, but she wasn't actually mentioning transgender. So a specific, that's interesting that she's actually for it, but people are still against her. You see what I mean?
Well, I mean, the complaint from the groups was that transgender people seem to be excluded from the conversation with that.
Okay.
So effectively, what the groups wanted was for the lecture to be reconsidered and for the university to meet with gay, lesbian, and transgender people both on campus and off campus to discuss discuss conversations around these issues. However, the sort of attempt to stop the lecture did fail, and it did go ahead. It took place, I believe, on Tuesday in the law department of the university.
Yeah. So listen, if you're listening to this and you actually attended that lecture, tell us what it was about, because clearly it's very important that our students are able to have critical thought and be able to come to conclusions themselves, and merits of arguments can be quite obvious at times. So if you're there, tell us how it went. I would love to hear more. James,
Well,
thank you very much for that story.
Yeah, what I would say is that the university is it's a signatory of a royal charter for academic freedom, and it's committed to freedom of speech. So that's what the university said on the issue, and it did go ahead. The lecture did go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. Well, James, we'll come to the end of the show. So I want to say thank you to you listeners and you watchers for listening to us on Berkshire News and Politics. And this is our Reading elections special with James Aldridge and myself, Wisdom de Costa. We look forward to seeing and hearing you again in the near future. And if you want to contact us, you can call me on 07962 144901. You can email me wisdom@berkshirenews.org. And James, I'll pass over to you so you can tell people how they can contact you.
So on Twitter, I'm at James A. Journo. James A. Journo. And email james.aldridge, ALDRIDGE, at newsquest.co.uk. So that's how you can get hold of me. And all the articles that I write are published on the Reading Chronicle. Every now and again, I make it into Reading Today, which is a new paper and website which began last year, and every now and again on the BBC as well. But yeah, if you want to look at what I've written, a list of what I've written, search my name, James Aldridge, Reading Chronicle, in Google, and you should get a list of my articles.
Fantastic. And of course, the links are down below in the text box. And remember, vote on Thursday. Thank you. Bye-bye.